Good day, wherever it is in the world you are. Welcome back to Victoria Electric Vehicle Association on YouTube. We're here with all the good stuff on EVs and energy around the planet. And today, we're just going to talk about a recent federal EV policy shift in Canada. Came out yesterday. And yeah, the good, the bad, and the unclear. So what we're going to do first off, we're going to look at what the headline talking points were. First, Canada's electric vehicle availability standard is to be repealed. It's an act in Parliament and it has to be taken away. What that means is that Canada does not have any legislation that says at a federal level Canada must have X number of percent of EVs at any particular date. Period. There's a lot of other stuff out there that might say they were looking for an equivalent to that, and we'll talk a little bit about that. EV sales incentives are returning very shortly, 16th of February. More on that later. Another 1.5 billion towards direct current fast charging to get you between cities, one city to another. Again, more details to follow. New greenhouse gas emissions and fuel consumption standards, 2027 to 2032. Again, more to follow. Changes to emission standards for companies building in Canada. Our battery chain and auto production. This is, roughly speaking, if you build here or you help to build the battery chain, you're going to get special compensation, tax-wise or otherwise. That's generally a good thing. Support to auto worker industry people. Right now, the the auto industry is hurting a great deal. A lot of the American companies who have been building here in Canada since 1965 have pretty much dropped their production by over half in the last decade or so. And that's meant a lot of people have been thrown out of work. Those are the people on the directly assembling autos, but it also means an awful lot of companies that make the parts in Canada that go into those vehicles. They've also been hurt quite a deal. So what this means, there'll be some openings, some widening of the definitions for employment, insurance, and retraining. And they're very keen to say that we're going to maintain counter tariffs on US-made vehicles. That sounds very straightforward. It really isn't. So let's get into the details. Okay, so when talking about incentives, they're only for electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles under $50,000 made in free trade agreement countries. There are 51 that Canada has free trade agreements with around the world. China is not one of them. But there's no limit on the price of the vehicle if the vehicle is made here in Canada. Okay, so if you are, say, Korea, and you make an EV that is sold here in Canada, and it's under $50,000 for the base price, for lack of a better term, then your car will qualify for Canadian incentives. If you're an American car company, same thing, because we have a free trade agreement with the US. Sort of. And again, it's $5,000 for every electric vehicle. Plug-in hybrid vehicles, $2,500. But this is going to decrease annually to zero by 2031, which is interesting. That's rather a short time frame to sunset a program like that. Okay, we talked about 1.5 billion in direct current fast chargers. This isn't actually new money. This is money that's already been identified at the Canadian Investment Bank from 2022, but it's a recognition that more of that money may need to go to building out fast chargers in between cities. So a little bit of government magic there. Maintaining car tariffs in US-made vehicles. Okay, so that only applies to parts and vehicles that are outside of the US, the current Canada-US-Mexico agreement or the US-Mexico-Canada agreement rules. So if the car was under free trade before, there are no counter tariffs happening right now. If you're Mexican, however, Mexican vehicle coming up, no tariffs, no counter tariffs there either. And the reason that the federal government feels we do not need an electric vehicle availability standard anymore and no requirement to meet EVs at any specific time is because they're bringing in new greenhouse gas standards for between 2027 and 2032. We do not know how many grams per kilometer that standard is, or if it applies fleet-wide as opposed to individual vehicles. It should apply fleet-wide just as the European do. Okay? Yeah. And standards matter. And why do they matter? So if you look at Canada's average internal combustion engine consumption vehicle, about 8.6 liters per 100 kilometers, or 223 grams per kilometer of carbon dioxide equivalent in their use. Okay, that's actually pretty high, higher than anywhere else in the developed world. Now, if we go to, say, Canada works out the standards to be like European, their current standards for CO2 are 93 grams per kilometer, which is an equivalent of 3.5 liters per 100 kilometers and 41% of our current average. Now, how does that rack and stack with driving an electric vehicle in Canada? So Canada's average EV, we're going to make the number 20 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, although there are a number of different EVs out there that'll drive for a lifetime average of 15 kilometers, or correction, kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. We're going to use 20 just to make sure we're fair. And the average on the Canadian grid across the country, 100 grams per kilowatt hours, although some places are much more, some places are much less. But we take those averages, we get down to 20 grams per kilometer of travel, or 9% of the average of an internal combustion engine vehicle. And in BC, it's only 1.4 grams per kilometer traveled. So, all this to say is that at first blush, government announcement, it sounds okay for the most part, but like most things, the devil is in the details. Stand by. We'll talk more when we know more. And that's all for today. Please visit Victoria AV Association on YouTube. Check out our well over 100 other videos on interesting matters. Join us. It's free to join. You'll get the best weekly newsletter in Canada on EVs and energy. And if you've made it this far, thank you for listening. Ciao.